So what defines the vocal techniques of different genres? I've talked in other videos before about this idea of resonance strategies and how different genres tackle this in singing, because I oftentimes get clients who want to branch into different genres but don't know where to start. So the human voice kind of operates like a woodwind or brass instrument in that there's closure on one side in the vocal folds and opening on the other at the mouth, and then room in between for the sound to resonate in. So all the sounds that we're going to make in the human voice are going to be complex with a fundamental frequency that originates in the voice that interacts with different kinds of resonance spikes called formants. F1 and F2 are called the vowel formants, and these are going to be really influenced by which vowels we sing. When we talk about maximizing resonance, we're generally trying to get big spikes here with a pretty big valley between F1 and F2. Generally, how we do this is to drop the larynx, kind of open the top of our throat, but then create a small space into the entryway of our mouth. So here's a spectrogram which maps out the sounds that I'm going to be making. You'll notice that if I keep the same fundamental frequency, the same pitch, but I modify the vowels, you're going to see a different visual impact. E, ooh. And then to simplify, if I do those moves that are associated with a more resonant sound that I mentioned before, you're going to see basically a thicker resonance stack. And you'll notice that that second formant is going to get really bunched up there with all those top level frequencies. Now, what these frequencies don't have is a lot of noise, which is just a lot of this random activity here that kind of comes along with me just speaking normally. But in other genres, we actually are chasing some amount of noise in the signal. We don't want those stacks, those resonance stacks, to look quite as clean. If I make a little bit more of a distorted sound, you're going to notice that we don't get these clean stacks in the same way. Ow! Yow! This leads us to end with this chart, which basically depicts kind of a simplification of how genres relate to resonance versus noise. Generally speaking, in classical genres, you just want to maximize resonance and minimize noise. Musical theater, there is room for sort of texture and character interpretation that might introduce some noise, but you're still aiming for resonance. And last, you have metal and rock genres on the far end, which are generally going to want to actually prioritize noise in a lot of instances. There's absolutely nothing wrong with prioritizing resonance, but sometimes where classical pedagogy can lead people astray is portraying this as if it's the only type of vocalization that's valid, which is sometimes why musical theater and classical singers crossing over to other genres can actually struggle to feel and sound authentic in those genres. And of course, vice versa, crossing over to classical and musical theater can present demands on the resonance that rock and pop singers are not used to.